Hello to all. I do not know if you can hear me for now. I've just started. Just checking as it is my second time only. I need to check that I can find where everything is. And where am I? Okay, here I am. Right. So, good day to all. Thank you very much for joining tonight. So that's my second time on Twitch. It's my second live. The first one was last Sunday, where I was giving a session both in French and English, and a few people told me that it would be preferable having separate sessions with just one language, that it would be easier for people attending. So I'm doing it, and today is the first one in English only, and tomorrow at the same time will be the first time in French only. So, so for today, I'm intending to address some more matters relating to the end of studies dissertation, as a number of you are submitting soon or are defending soon. So that's the hi Brian. So that's the very point for now. Now, as you are by the end of the process, there are a number of questions that arise and that I think need to be addressed now. And those questions are namely, not just, but namely two, relating one to plagiarism and similarity scoring, similarity issues, and the other relates to AI usage in your dissertation. Why those two matters, and why those two matters now in particular? So first of all, hi to all those who are progressively joining. Thank you for being here today. So I was just saying, for this second time on Twitch, it is the first session fully in English, and tomorrow will be the first session fully in French. And I was also explaining that today there will be two big issues that I think need to be addressed. The first one relates to plagiarism and similarity, and the other one relates to AI usage and how you can spot and detect it. Why those two issues? So as we did last time, I will start talking, and of course interject. Do not hesitate to interact, to ask questions relating to your specific situation, or more general questions that could be of interest to other listeners for today. So, similarity issues. Let me tell you a story before I really engage in similarity issues, plagiarism issues in the dissertation. What the story was that years ago, about 10 years ago, I had given my students a case study, and it was a case study on the Salvation Army and something on governance and how it is structured. And the case study was expecting a discussion of the Salvation Army's organization. There was no one expected response. And what happened? I had a script written by 3 students, which surprised me because I recognized everything in it. The students had come across a paper I wrote on this and just copied and pasted it in their essay in the case study. And it was problematic. I referred to the Associate Dean for Teaching and Learning, asking what I should do about it. I was very upset because of two things. One was that they were absolutely off topic. They were not answering the question. They were not addressing the case study at all. So I read stuff which was unnecessary here. The second thing was that they reused my own work, which is not a problem in itself, without quoting me, which is half of a problem to me right now, but they believed that I would not realize it is my own work. And I was really upset that they could think I'm stupid enough, so I do not realize that they are recycling my work before my own eyes. So they were then summoned to a disciplinary panel, as this was clearly an act of plagiarism. So, what is plagiarism and why does it matter here in your situation, with your dissertation, with your thesis? There are many definitions of plagiarism, but in a nutshell, plagiarism is when you appropriate someone else's ideas, someone else's utterances or writings without giving them any credits for it, as though this was your own stuff. When you do this, so it is no longer something we do, but when you would do this 10 or 15 years ago with DVDs, if you were copying a DVD, this was called stealing. This was called piracy. And I remember a thing on this account in British cinemas. When the film was displayed, just before it started, there were announcements or disclaimers, and one was showing someone stealing a bunch of DVDs from HMV store, and then the announcement was saying, you would not steal from the store. When you illegally download, when you illegally copy a DVD, it is theft. So here is something quite similar. It does not show in the first place, we do not have the impression we're doing anything bad, but actually when you appropriate someone else's idea without giving them any credit for it, it is an act of theft. And so based on this, how can we understand what plagiarism looks like and how can we prevent and detect? So the simplest form of plagiarism is when you just copy and paste part or all of something written by someone else and never reference it, never quote it properly, never ascribe it to the original authors. This is the most obvious form of plagiarism, and also the most reprehensible. Then there are many other more subtle forms of plagiarism and similarities. One is when you copy and paste something and then you edit what you've pasted. You amend a few words, you change punctuation a wee bit, you remove some punctuation marks, etc. So that cosmetically it looks slightly different, but eventually it is the same. That's a second way of being caught for plagiarism. A third one consists, and it's more subtle, but still problematic, consists of not copying and pasting someone else's idea as such, but consists of rewording it, rephrasing it using your own words, but pretending it is yours, your own idea, without referencing it at all, without saying, as such and such could have written, blah, 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 blah. No, it gives the impression it is your own work. Then there is a fourth way of plagiarism, and the fourth way is again more subtle, and it consists of translating into a foreign language a text written by others in a different one. And here the problem is exactly the same. You appropriate someone else's work without giving them any credits for it, without properly referencing it. So I explained beforehand why it matters, why it is problematic. So it is problematic because you neglect, you deliberately ignore intellectual property and academic credentials. Imagine if you were doing the same with patents. Imagine someone has developed a technology and because you like it, you copy it without giving any notice, without paying any fees for the cost they've incurred or whatsoever, and then you pretend it is yours. I can imagine you would understand that the initiator of this technology would be very upset. Here, with research, it is exactly the same thing. So, with plagiarism, you should be very cautious with the fact that institutions take it very, very seriously. Higher education institutions take it very seriously, so that more and more, I would not say everywhere in the world because I do not want to overly generalize, but more and more in many countries, this is taken as a disciplinary matter with penalties, with sanctions. And if you consider a country like France, it is where plagiarism goes through the most severe sanctions. Plagiarism in France is considered not just misconduct, not just misbehavior, but is considered fraud. And if it is for your dissertation, it means fraud at a national exam. And here the sanctions are, first, 0, you fail for the assignment, for the dissertation. Fair enough, expected. Second, expelled from the university. And the strongest possible sanction is that you might be forbidden to take any national exam for the next 5 years, which includes the driving license, which might include also the fishing license or hunting license or anything which is nationally driven. A problem. So it's very, very serious. Now, having said that, how do we control for it? How do we detect plagiarism in our students' work? I would say there is the old-fashioned way, which I did for years. The old-fashioned way is when you, as a reader, have a suspicion that the part you were reading is probably not written by the student. It is not written by the student because it is too well written. And your student has not used you to such a good command of language and written language. So you think, no, this part, this paragraph is probably not original. Then what did I do in the past? In the past, I would copy and paste a couple of lines and copy them and paste them in Google and check what the results are. And generally, you have as a result the document or the website from which it was taken. Then you think, okay, they think I will never find that it's not their work, but it is easy. So this is the old-fashioned way. Another way, another suspicion of plagiarism is also when you identify a sort of a breakthrough or inconsistency in how the dissertation is written, in the writing style. Some parts might be written in a certain way and another part in a different way. Then it means that at least the dissertation was not properly edited, proofread by the student or by anyone else, but generally it means that some parts were not the student's own work. Then you do the old-fashioned way, you copy and paste some sections and identify what the results in a search engine are. This is what I did in the first place. Then we also detect something. I remember when I was a student about 25 years ago, 25 plus years ago, we were asked when we were in first year to write a mini dissertation. And I had a schoolmate who wrote it on Julius Caesar's literature. And very interestingly, he said, "Oh, I found the book." So it was at the beginnings of internet for the public, etc. I said, "I found the book, very interesting. I scanned every single page, and I then transformed this into a word processor document, and this was my dissertation." But he said, but I had to be very cautious. I had to reread it because there were sections where the author was saying, Winston Churchill was recently saying, Winston Churchill. So if as a reader I come across this, Winston Churchill was saying recently, I would think, no, it's not your own work. What it was also saying, I had to be very cautious with some other expressions, such as, my very good friend King Edward. And then you would think, no, it's not the right period. There is something wrong. So we could detect with some signals, weak signals. Nowadays, we have tools. I would say there are two tools that are very, very well known, and a third one which is not as known for this, but still. So now the two tools you may know that your schools might be using are Turnitin for one and Compilatio for the other. Both tools do the same type of work. They browse the whole internet. They've been trained, so it's sort of an introduction to AI applied to higher education. So they were trained on everything on the internet, starting with academic publications, which means papers, so articles in journals, books that are also available online book chapters, conference proceedings, everything which is also old but scanned, etc. Anything in writing available on the internet, be it on public or private databases. When I say private databases, I mean those academic databases released by publishers where you find your academic journals, or the academic journals you're using for your dissertation or thesis. So, both softwares, so Turnitin and Compilatio, work more or less in the same way. So, what happens? The dissertation is submitted to the software, and then the software runs and checks for similarities between your own text, the submitted text, and everything available on the internet. And then it returns a score, which is a percentage of similarity with other documents but yours. Also, just as the score is not enough, they show every single passage from your work that is similar to passages coming from other people's work and shows which ones. So, supposedly, allegedly, it is undisputable. Allegedly. Because, to be honest, it is a good intuition. It gives a good intuition, a good idea of the extent to which you might have fraudulently appropriated someone else's idea. But it is not accurate. It's not science. It's not objectively acceptable as such. What we see is that very often there are some false similarities. What do we call those false similarities? So this is what with AI we would call hallucinations. So false similarities are similarities that occur when when certain expressions or certain sentences are sort of standard in research and are used very commonly, nearly everywhere, such as this model returns result blah blah blah. There are some expressions like this, many others, that are so standard that you are always caught for plagiarism with this. Another weakness of those software tools is that very often your also those false frauds or false positives relate to quotes that are not totally correct, but that do not mean that you are actually cheating. It means lapsus linguae. That is a quote without proper quotation marks or inconsistent quotation marks. So this is identified as stealing someone else's idea, and it counts to your liabilities if we speak in accounting terms. Another weakness is that any of those software also tends to count the bibliography, or not exactly the bibliography per se, but some sequences of references in your bibliography as a borrowing from someone else's work. Of course, now things are improving with those software where we can set them up so that they can exclude bibliography, they can exclude a number of things, but still there are some there are some inaccuracies, which means that at the end of the day, the score which is returned does not entirely reflect the very similarities between your own work and someone else's work. So it is an estimate of what is plausible, given also how much those other works tend to be plagiarized. It is sort of an algorithm calculating probabilities that what you have written and potentially borrowed from someone else has already been borrowed by someone else from the same person. So at the end of the day, we have something which is an intuition, which may be confirmed or not. And we have a score which does not necessarily reflect what your actual borrowing is. And this is something that could explain why, using different software, you might have different scores. The algorithm is not exactly the same. The algorithm is not working exactly the same way, so that results may differ from one to the other. So, a question that you might ask yourself at the moment is, how can I detect similarities, or the similarities the software could identify, be they legitimate or not? And how can I avert a high score? So, first thing, how can I avert a high score? The average academic would say, just make sure everything is written in your own words. Make sure that you are properly quoting, referencing other people's work. Fair enough, but you do not need me today to tell you this truth. Right. So, indeed, the best way is to have things written by yourself. Okay, now how can I detect by myself what the software would tell my examiners? And here there is one, I would say there is one policy, probably in your school, and then I've got a tip. The policy is that at least in France, schools automatically run your work through the software. The school has a subscription, pays a license and an annual fee to use this software, either for a certain number of students or pieces of work, or for a certain period of time. In some schools, your work is run through the software automatically when you submit. And then you receive, after you have submitted, you receive the score. In other programs, where I was at Grenoble, at the doctoral school, when I was the director of the doctoral school, we asked students to run Turnitin by themselves, so to submit their dissertation on Turnitin and then to send us the report. Of course, we had a copy of the report as well. So, if the student decided to fake, to counterfeit the report, we would know. And then it would be even more serious than just being caught for similarities. And we found at some point another unexpected weakness, which is a student who had submitted beforehand a previous version of his dissertation. And then, after changes had been made on this dissertation, submitted it anew. and then it was run through Turnitin for the second time, and plagiarism was over 80%. Big shock. So, and what happened? We found that when there is any record of this work, of your own work, anywhere online, and if you resubmit later something you have improved, something legitimate, this may result in a high score. So, my tip, if you want to have an estimate of your own of your own works similarities score, is, I'd say, fairly simple. I wish I could have shared my screen with you, but as it's my second time today only, I discovered that I do not have a full command of the software for Twitch. So I know how to use the camera this time, but I'm not sure how to use the screen share properly. I tried early on, and the result was weird, like a stroboscope, as in a nightclub, and that's not really what you would like to see, especially if you have epilepsy. It's not the best thing, the best preset. But I promise that soon, either next time or the following week, I will have a better command of the software, and I will be able to share my screen with you. So, what I recommend is something I do for students' work I receive, is that you should use AI, your favorite one. It could be ChatGPT, it could be Gemini, it could be Claude, it could be LeChat, it could be DeepSeek, whatsoever. And here you write a basic prompt, and I can show you next time I have a good command of the software. When I can eventually share my screen with you, I'll show you how it can look. So you write a prompt telling your AI what you expect. So first of all, what is the role of your AI? So you must be very clear. So your role here, you are it could be anything. So I would say, so what I wrote was, you are a word expert at detecting plagiarism in academic work. You are a good friend to 𝗵𝗫𝗴𝗏. 𝗵𝗫𝗴𝗏, she is in Europe the person, the reference on plagiarism. So here you are telling AI in what position, in what mindset it should be. And then you should add something like, you are worldwide known for this, you are acknowledged for this and for your excellent work. Here you put AI under pressure. So this means your work must be good. Second, a bit of context. And the context here is, I've received a dissertation in this situation. So student such and such, you can give the matriculation number if you want. You explain in what school, you can explain in what program, for what degree or whatsoever. You explain also what this document is about. Is it the final piece of work? Is it something you want to assess before submitting? So give those contextual features to your favorite AI. Then your task. So your task here is, this is what I do. I say your task. You write a report. I do not need anything lengthy, so it's just to have an estimate for myself. Write a report, so where you explain in one paragraph to what extent this document is plagiarizing other people's works, and give the plagiarism score. And I can add exclude everything before the introduction and after the conclusion. Also, I can say exclude anything which is in brackets or with reverted commas. quotation marks. I could also, if I want, say exclude those expressions that are standard expressions, and then give me a similarity score plus this report. Then you push a wee bit more by saying in what format you want it. So here I just mentioned I would like, as a format, I would like a brief report, 1 paragraph, and this score. But I could say also I want a visual report where you detail section by section, chapter by chapter, plagiarism, so the score, plus the type of plagiarism, how it was done. I can also say, simply, give me a report exactly like Turnitin or Compilatio would. Here it is possible, but trickier, as technically it requires a lot of work for your AI, so that it might not really be able to do anything very satisfactory. Because it means it has to sort of simulate the algorithm of this software, which means at least double as much work as it would do normally. And also it requires that it generates, and here I'm sorry if it's technical, but it requires that your AI generates a document, so in a file which is not native to its system. And of my own experience, when you ask AI to generate a Word document, in 95% of the times, of the cases, it fails. Either it just crashes, or you have a document you cannot download, so it's corrupted, or you have an incomplete document. So if you ask for something as close to what one of those renowned softwares does, you're exposing yourself to technical problems, technical glitches. So I would recommend, as a format, just some text explaining the type, the score, and if you want, you can do it chapter by chapter. This is something I've done. And interestingly, I've compared the score with what Turnitin would do. I took the same dissertation, ran it through Turnitin, and the scores were not exactly the same, but consistent. One was perhaps saying 15% and the other one was saying 18 or 20%. So it was quite similar. I did not have a big gap, like someone saying, oh, it's totally original, and the other one saying, oh, it's totally plagiarized. No, it does not happen. So I'm saying this to give you some tips and hints so you can, by yourselves, run your own work through AI and ask how much similarities with other people's work it can detect. And you can even ask where some effort is made so it no longer looks similar, so that it's eventually your own work, in your own words. One thing, if there are, of course, questions, remarks, or whatsoever, please do not hesitate to engage, interact in the chat, and I will respond. I continue speaking until there are interjections in the chat. And this takes me to the second thing I wanted to discuss with you today, which I think is very important. I do not want to state the obvious, but I'm sorry, I will probably have to do that though. Since November 2022 and the launch of the first version of ChatGPT, the use of AI by students has dramatically increased, and universities have proved to be quite conservative on this. adoption by students has been massive, and universities have been defensive and defiant vis-à-vis AI on many accounts. One is that it is considered, so using AI for a dissertation, and we will then discuss what it means using AI for dissertation. Using AI for dissertation is cheating because it means that the piece of work is no longer the student's own work. Also, universities are quite defensive because it is a sort of a big challenging of academics, faculty, of judging a piece of work. So the student really believes that I can believe myself this piece of work is his or hers, although it is quite obvious it is not. Obvious it is not, I'll get back to this soon. Or even higher up, we can, or the world can, automate a number of things, but anything which is intellectual can't be. Anything which is supposedly creative can't be. So this is like an offense on intellect, an offense on intelligence, pretending that something like a dissertation could be generated by AI. So, universities have tried to first prevent students from using AI. So finding ways of prohibiting the use of AI. But you cannot really make sure or control that students would not use AI at all. That's one thing. The second thing is AI is a reality. It is a truth, and we need to live with it. So it is as if you were prohibiting students from using the internet, prohibiting them from using a search engine instead of going to the library. No, it is there. We must live with it. We must learn how to use it. Then universities have more recently issued guidelines regarding the use of AI. So in what circumstances, under what conditions is the use of AI allowed or tolerated? And they require a number of disclaimers regarding the use of AI in students' works. Okay. But more recently, so it was early this week, probably on Monday or Tuesday, I read a post on LinkedIn from a colleague saying that he read a student's dissertation and suspected that interviews, so the dissertation was interview-based, the empirical material was interviews, that interviews were generated by AI, and was wondering how to detect that it was eventually the case and how to handle the situation. And here is what I can tell as to what it means using AI for dissertation. And then I'll go a wee bit further. So what it means is that nowadays, very simply, the simplest use of AI is when someone asks their favorite generative AI to write for them part or the whole dissertation. And here it is, I would say it would be very simple. I'm writing a dissertation on this topic. Please write it. It should be that amount of word, blah, blah, blah. Then what happens is that you're expectedly from students, but mistakenly as well. So expectedly, AI will generate a text, a full not a full document because I told you that it fails, but a text in the body of the conversation with everything you want. And then, if you do not read it, you just copy and paste and then submit. That's the most basic, the most stupid way of using AI. Why is it? It is because AI needs clear instructions. If you do not give any instructions or clear instructions, the result will be very general and generic with standard. So everything will be standard. Language will be standard. Contents will be standard. Everything will be standard. So that anyone else would have exactly or nearly the same result as you. And the contents will not be very interesting. Pretty boring. So, another use of AI in a dissertation is when you let's say with something which is fraudulent again, but not everything is. Something still fraudulent is when you say, okay, I want to deal with that type of data, but I have no idea where to find it, or it is not accessible, blah, blah, blah. Please generate the data I need. And then your favorite AI generates your data set. And again, data which is standard. So if you are doing a marketing survey with a questionnaire addressed to people, blah, 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 so it will generate a questionnaire borrowed from other questionnaires found online, and will also generate responses that are a sort of an average of what you find online, so that you are perfectly in the average of what other studies have done. I saw in the post I mentioned, in the LinkedIn post I mentioned early on, I saw that it was interviews, and here AI potentially generated interviews. That's exactly the same thing. If you do not know how to ask or what to ask, you have something very general, very generic, very standard. Then there are other ways of using AI which are not really problematic, I think. One is, and I tried, one is when you do qualitative research, when you take your empirical material and you ask AI to do the coding. I mean, okay, let's say if you're doing qualitative research, you've got your interview material, and you say, okay, here is my interview material, here is my theoretical framework, you are software, so you are qualitative data analysis software such and such, please generate the codes like the software would do. And then AI operates not as a surrogate for you, but as a surrogate for the other software. Likewise, if you have quantitative data and ask it to conduct statistical tests and mention which ones, then it will do it, like another software would. Perhaps with some limitations, but in general it works pretty well. Is it something reprehensible? The question is open. Not many people complain about this, but I'm just saying this is something that exists. For now, it is a sort of a grey area. Can we use AI for data analysis as a data analysis tool? We do not know yet, so no, you know it now. I also heard of students who used AI to help them with the structure of the dissertation, with structuring the dissertation. Honestly, I'm always a bit surprised or confused when I hear something like this, because the structure of a dissertation is generally quite predictable, quite simple. You probably have done it with yours. Introduction. Chapter 1 is literature review and theoretical framework. Chapter 2, data and methods. Chapter 3, findings, results. Chapter 4, discussion, and then conclusion. Then I'm not sure how you might need help on those. But let's say, why not? Another potential use of AI is for language, of editing or proofreading. I know that many people do it, use it for that purpose. Or they started with Grammarly. Even some copy editors at times use AI to help them in their jobs. So at times when inspiration is no longer there, AI can give you a sort of a boost. As a student, as you use Grammarly or any other AI software or tool for language, this should not be a big issue. Okay, so now a few words on how we detect or do not detect the use of AI when it's problematic. When it's healthy, nobody complains, then no need to really back yourselves or whatsoever. So, those plagiarism detecting software, such as Compilatio, pretend to also detect AI usage, giving a score. This document is X% AI written or AI generated. No other explanation. Right. There are some other software companies having similar tools, but interestingly, you do not have two software that agree. They never return the same score. So the question is, how come? How come two softwares addressing the same problem result in two different things? And here is something on how come it happens. You should understand that generative AI and large language models and generative AI rest upon probabilities. So this means that AI, when it writes on the basis of the probability that a certain combination of words should be found together in a certain context. So this means there are many standard wordings, many standard sentences, many standard paragraphs. The probability are when I use the word results, t-test, robustness, the probability that all those words combined together result in this sentence or in this type of paragraph, where perhaps a few numbers will change, is 90%. So generative AI would write this as it is something bound to be written by anyone else. But also, generative AI, with some exceptions, considers a certain pace in the sentence and repeats this as a pattern. And I will give you some examples very, very soon. So there is a pattern, writing pattern with similar words, similar rhythm in the sentence, or alternation between certain types of words or certain types of sentences, which from one paragraph to another reoccur systematically. And all this because of those probabilities, like I said. But two types of software do not use the same algorithm and do not have the same way of computing those probabilities, not the same things fall within their probabilities, so that the result is not the same for everybody. So here is the example I will give you. And I wrote a LinkedIn post on this this week, so it's nothing really new. I tested something. I wrote many commentaries in newspapers in the past 20 years, and I took a number of those. There were serious matters, right? I took a number of those and asked ChatGPT to reword them or to rewrite them in the style of Groucho Marx. So I want those commentaries to read as if Groucho Marx had written them. The result was hilarious. Really hilarious. I spent great evenings laughing out loud, reading my own boring commentaries written by Groucho Marx. And then I was curious and I asked ChatGPT, okay, how do you do when you transform my work into Groucho Marx? And how come it is always this funny, always successful? The answer was, first, with all your commentaries, I have identified your writing patterns. That's the starting point. And he detailed pretty well my writing patterns. I thought, oh, okay, did not realize it was this predictable. And even when in the way I asked my question, I remember I typed before finishing my sentence, and ChatGPT finished my own sentence saying, and I'm sure you will finish your sentence this way. And I thought, oh gosh, so you really know how I write. And then I asked, but then, okay, for myself, but for Groucho Marx, how did you do so? It is so funny, so hilarious. And he said, oh, okay, Groucho Marx writing pattern is as follows. I can't remember exactly, but he said he starts from an absurd situation and gave me an example coming from my own commentaries. Like you were invited to give a talk somewhere. Your suitcase has not arrived, and you are only in your pajamas, and you arrive on stage before 200 people in your pajamas. This is an absurd situation. We start from there. So Groucho Marx always starts from there. Okay, fair enough. And then from this absurd situation, he starts with something very serious about it. And then imagine me in my pajamas and speaking of the advent of AI and the use of AI in very serious research. People would probably start smiling a bit. And then he detailed, I can't remember everything, like I said, but he detailed the whole pattern. So, then I understood. And he explained also how he found those patterns in everything Groucho Marx had written, etc. But then I also asked, okay, now, I asked Claude. I ran those commentaries through Claude and asked Claude, what is, according to you, the probability that those commentaries, the Groucho Marx written commentaries, were written by generative AI? And Claude said, I could not say 100%, but at least 90%. And I asked, why? How come? He said, too repetitive. There is a pattern which is always the same, with exactly the same rhythm, with exactly the same type of words, coming at the same times. It's predictable. And this is how I could detect that it's highly probable that generative AI wrote them. I thought, wow, very, very strong. So just to get back to the point, how can you detect by yourselves? By running your or another generative AI and asking to what extent it thinks that there's a probability that part or everything in your work has been generated by AI. Having said that, there are situations of false positives and two opposed situations. One situation is when you have people not having a very good command of the language and writing in a very simple style. And this very simple style is nearly standard. So that nearly anyone else could have written it in the same way. And then AI might consider, oh, this language is so poor, not bad, but so poor and lacks so much originality that it must have been written by AI. And in this situation, we might have a number of international students of good faith, though, but writing as they can and detected or falsely detected as positive. And the opposite is when, conversely, you have people having such a great command of language and of written language that AI considers it is too good. So it is too good, it is too close to perfection, so the probability that AI was involved is very high. Then it happens that conversely AI does not detect its own use when you edit the text, when you break the rhythm, when language is poor with short sentences, if you enhance some of the sentences, if you add a few words, if you change punctuation or whatsoever, AI is not detected. And here the question, it is a very open question. The question is this fraud? Has the text been generated by AI? Or have you been the chief editor of AI and have you commanded AI so that is AI your co-author? Which is not quite the same. I'm not saying that you should do that, but at least it is an open question with no answer for now. But I suspect that universities will not like the idea that AI could be a co-author or that you could have been AI's editor-in-chief. I doubt it. So here, like I said, with AI usage and how you can detect it or prevent it, it's important that indeed you use your own AI and to run your own text through AI to see how AI itself or its direct competitor views it. This is, to me, the most reliable way of doing, much more reliable than using Compilatio, much more reliable than just relying on your own intuitions, although intuitions may help. And of course, this will not have any value if you are challenged on or the originality of your text, but at least before you submit, you can have an idea, an intuition of how AI use may be perceived in your university if they try to detect it. And it's very important, so you can anticipate and you can make a number of corrections on the text before you submit. So yeah, thank you, 𝗬𝗏𝗧𝗧. I suspect it's 𝗬𝗧𝗧. This is what I really wanted to address by myself for tonight, and I apologize for the long monologue. Now, if you have questions, queries relating to what I've said or not said, or relating to your own situations, your own dissertations, please do not hesitate. So the chat is open, the floor is yours, and I'm more than happy to answer questions and engage in a conversation with you. So, in case some are typing, I would really like you to have in mind the fact that none of those tools for plagiarism, for AI detection, none of those tools is reliable, is 100% reliable. They all rest upon an algorithm with its own biases, with its own limits, and it is always, remember, always a probabilistic estimate of something happening based on a combination of words. Are there cases of false positives, people who got labeled for plagiarism erroneously? Well, for plagiarism erroneously, it's not exactly this. For plagiarism, it's what happens is that, but software are improving. But what often happens is that you have a very high score that does not take into consideration the fact that you have the bibliography, that there are some standard sentences that are nearly inevitable, and also that at times you may not have quoted perfectly. I mean, if you do not use quotation marks, but if you use indent or a different font, you do not have the guarantee that the software will detect that it is a quote. And in case it does not detect that it is a quote, the software will return similarity. So, what we did at 𝗀𝗏𝗃, at the very beginning, when the tool was released, we took it as the truth, the revealed truth. And then when we saw a score that looked very high, we summoned students to a disciplinary panel. And over time, we found that there are numbers that are terribly high. And this was detected with, in particular with very good students, model students, students who would never cheat, who have never cheated, who were always the best in their cohorts, but then suddenly caught with an abnormal similarity rate. And then we dug in depth and tried to understand how come. So how come this student has plagiarized other people's work? What has happened? And then we found that the overall score is imperfect, and that you have to remove a number of things. At the time, we had to do it manually, so we had to do our own computations, and then we arrived at a score which was close to 0 because of the flaws in the software or in the algorithm. So yes, there were such situations. Nowadays, you can set it up as a user, so you exclude a number of things, but at the end of the day, you are never totally exempt of false positives. In the case of a false positive, the student will be summoned to a meeting. If there is suspicion, if there is no doubt, there will be a disciplinary panel. But if there is just a suspicion, and if there is an investigation, nothing disciplinary just yet, then as a student, you can explain yourself. You can come with your own record and show and compare and then prove the number is wrong. So just to answer your question, Brian, are there cases of false positives? Yes, there are. Less and less, but there are. And are there people caught for plagiarism mistakenly? There are. Less and less, but there are. Now I would say, and I'm sorry if I give tips or incentives for cheating, but we also have students who found that you can bluff any software by adding invisible signs between words. This means it can be any invisible punctuation mark. It can be any invisible special character like at, hash, or a star or whatsoever. So invisible, so in a different color, so in white font on white background, so supposedly undetectable. Some others do the opposite. This means in the headers and footers, they add on purpose many sentences or expressions that are standard or whatsoever, so that there's a high score which is impossible to detect. So that the software says, oh, here is the part which has been taken from somewhere else, but it shows nowhere in the text. So you think, well, how can you accuse me of something when the software here shows similarities that do not exist? So here, what I want to say is that false positives happen less and less, but there are more and more tips students who want to fraud find so as to bluff the software. So there are now, I think, there's probably an equal number of false positives, so not very high, and of false negatives, because of very ingenious cheating, if I might say so. Does this answer your question, Brian? Okay, great. Any other questions or remarks, or so either relating to the subject itself or to your own situation? And something else I could... Rachel, thank you. You're welcome, Rachel. A pleasure. A pleasure. And so something else I wanted to say was that there's another phenomenon that occurs where there is self-plagiarism. self-plagiarism, and a real one, I mean true, not false plagiarism. It is the situation where we have a student, but it also happens with researchers. But let's speak of students in the first place, where a student has done a dissertation or written an essay in prior studies for a previous degree, and decides to reuse it for the next degree. And here, if the original piece of work was lodged online, then there are records. And then, of course, if you decide to do the same dissertation as you did elsewhere, this will be plagiarism. If you copy and paste, it will be 100% plagiarism with your own work. And then you can say, yes, but that's my own work. So how come I'm accused of plagiarism? Well, you are accused of plagiarism because in this new degree, you pretend that this is your own work for now, of the time, but no, it is not your own work for now. It was your own work elsewhere. Plus, a piece of work that was submitted somewhere belongs to the place where it was submitted. So that if you submit it somewhere else, it is as if the new university agreeing on this were stealing the intellectual property from the other one. Unknowingly, of course. So self-plagiarism is something very, very serious as well. But what if you take exactly the same topic, but you rewrite it? Like I said early on, at the very beginning, when you rewrite it, when you paraphrase it, it is still not an original piece of work, and those software find a different pattern in how the text is written. So they see that the structure of the paragraph, the structure of the document is the same, that a number of words are probably the same or synonyms, and that the combinations are either similar or are alike. And this is the same problem. It is not an original piece of work. And I spoke of researchers because it happens that indeed in research people recycle some pieces of work, something written for a certain audience, reused for a different audience, assuming, be they right or wrong, assuming that those different audiences do not know each other, that they do not overlap, and that, there should be no problem. But the publishers complain. The publisher says, yes, it is a problem. Here, you are selling to someone else something that belongs to me. I published this book, you authored, because of its contents. If you reuse this content exactly the same way, even using different words elsewhere, you are breaching our contract. I bought it, or I paid for it, because of the specific content, not because someone else could do the same afterwards, without having incurred all the investment in marketing. So self-plagiarism is also a big issue, a big concern in universities. So be very cautious with. So just for the conclusion of what I wanted to say, be very cautious with what you write, with what you submit. Use AI to help you detect how the software used in your university will react when you submit your document. The score will not be the same as what you see on your AI software, but at least it will be very useful. It will be indicative, a good indicator. And I had this discussion recently, so this week, yesterday I think, with a former student of mine who used my, so then I've got 10 minutes and I will speak of it. He used the tool I developed to help you assess your own work before you submit your thesis. And this tool returns a comprehensive report as a reviewer would write. So it's about 1,000 words, plus an indicative mark that the reviewer writing the report would give you, plus an indicative score of similarities and an indicative score of AI usage in the dissertation. And the student had different scores coming from Compilatio, and he was really worried about it, saying, but how come? And so it's very high and yours is lower, and how come? Who shall I trust? And I said, well, nobody. You should not trust anyone per se. It's just an indication that there is a suspicion. Be it legitimate or not, there is a suspicion. Be cautious. Investigate further so as to know, so as to understand the grounds for this suspicion. And if you can fix it, fix it. So I mentioned this tool. I want to tell you a few more words about it. And next time I have a good command, like I said, of this software, I can share my screen with you. I started sharing and spreading a beta version of this tool lately. And when I designed it, there were, let me count, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There were 10 steps in the process, in the background process, from submission to email with the report. And I realized that there was a big problem. Some technical limitations with servers are that any report, any dissertation above 20,000 words would not be processed. So the tool could not process anything above 25,000 words. So I decided to find a solution enabling me to process heavier or lengthier documents. And I thought initially that it would be something simple. I thought, okay, if the student submits the document, whatever the length is, and if my tool splits it into sub-documents, smaller parts, processed individually in the first place, and then concatenated afterwards for a final round, it should be fine. And yes, it could be fine. But for the past 3 days, I've been working on this, and guess what? I do not have 10 steps, but I have over 50 steps. Just to say that my tool will work better, will process all sorts of documents, but what I thought initially would be just the fixing of a small glitch becomes a massive change in the coding, in the process and everything. And of course, the more steps you have in the process, the more risk you have of encountering bugs or problems. And at the moment, I am setting everything up. I am trying to fix some bugs because there are a few glitches of course, when you have so many steps. But I'll get there. I'm getting there, and soon, so I think it should be a matter of days, soon I should have this tool working for any type of dissertation, bypassing, overcoming the technical limitations I'm currently encountering. So I would have loved to show you first the tool itself, and second, just a picture of how it looks before and how it looks now, without giving you, of course, any secrets, because a couple of things are still my own secrets. But just to show you the mess the new one is, as compared to the original one, which was such a simple tool, such a simple thing to do. Any other questions? Any other comments, remarks? Yeah, thank you, Lazaro. Neither can I. I can't wait for it either. But it's also interesting for me because as I've been working on this tool, I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot of things. First, I've learned how to automate things. So how to go beyond the skills I have developed with AI and to generate my own tools. I've discovered new software, new tools, new ways of thinking, and also without sounding too pompous or pretentious. Now, although I'm not able to write any codes, I've discovered this for a few days, for 2 days, I'm able to detect errors in codes. So when I see the codes and I say, no, this is wrong, I do not know what the solution is, but here is wrong, and then I check with AI, and most of the time I saw the glitches and errors pretty well, so I'm surprised by myself. Also, with this shift from the simple model to a more sophisticated one, I realized a few things that were totally foreign to me before. One is that when you think you will just fix a small problem, very often, if things were done this way, knowing that there would be a problem, it is for a good reason. Because fixing the problem would result in something so much more complex that it would take much more time to develop. It would probably be much more costly also, and much heavier to run. And at the end of the day, something more robust would paradoxically be less reliable in the first place. So I also realize or understand why very often when you launch a software, when you launch a product, you launch something which is not as good as it could be because it's there already. And you know that the right version, the one with which you are happy, will come soon. But at least you've launched something and you've showed what you are capable of doing. This is something I've learned with this, and I'm happy I've learned it. I'm happy I've learned all those things on automating, and I'm not finished learning, of course. I think I will be really ready with everything once I can fix errors by myself in codes. It's not for today. It's not for tomorrow either. It may never happen, but at least I've started with this, and I'm excited to discover a new world also, and I'm also very excited to share this experience with you, combined with my academic experience, as I've tried doing tonight. Tonight for Europeans, this morning for all others. So if you have any questions, remarks whatsoever, please feel free to interject. Otherwise, we will close for today. And I'm intending to continue each week on Saturdays at the same time in English, with matters relating to finishing with the dissertation or the thesis. Next week on the 30th of August, I really hope that I eventually have sufficient command of the tool so that I can really show you the tool and comment on it and share a bit of my experience with visuals, with some visible insights. But also next week, I think it will be interesting mentioning the oral defense and how to prepare for defense, or perhaps, not sure just yet, but I'll post soon, or perhaps on how to take comments from reviewers and how to respond to reviewers before you go to revisions or to viva. So I'm not sure just yet, but it will be either or. And if I have the sufficient command of the software, then I really hope I can share this tool with you. Although you can already try it, test it by yourselves. If you do, please send me your feedback. I'm more than happy to know what you think about it and how I can improve it. It's something very important to me to have something working well, something well appreciated, and something helpful, of course. So thank you all for being here today. Thank you all for joining, for staying, for commenting, for asking questions. So I wish you a lovely rest of the day, a lovely evening, and I hope to see you next week.